Good evening, good evening, good evening. I want to welcome you to another segment of the Jermaine Brown Sports Talk Show. Today is Tuesday, September the 26th, 2023. Now, usually I rarely come with videos this short in between, because I recently came out with one the other day, but I felt the need to speak about today about the New York Football Jets. Or really, they're not really called the New York Football Jets because that's really the New York Football Giants, but the New York Jets and all things New York Jets. And I might speak about other teams around the league and the state of play around the NFL tonight, this evening. All right. Aaron Rodgers recently came out with some comments on the Pat McAfee show, basically getting on the Jets fans, Joe Namath, about being negative towards Zach Wilson. The Jets fans is not negative towards Zach Wilson because of Zach Wilson. They're negative towards Zach Wilson because unfortunately the Jets did not properly prepare in the event you went down with an injury. Now, let me kind of back up a minute. I'm going to speak as a Jets fan, as me as a Jets fan, because that's what I am. I can't speak for a lot of other Jets fans, but I'm going to speak for me. I'm going to start by saying I'm a fan of you, Aaron Rodgers. I've been a fan of your play when you was with Green Bay, but you was not the guy that I wanted the Jets to go and get, to be really honest. The guy I wanted the Jets to go and get was Lamar Jackson, who was a free agent. You at least go and put in a big offer for him and force Baltimore to match it. But they chose not to go that route. They chose to fly to California to bring you in. Now, when the Jets did that, the best way Zach Wilson could have avoided what is taking place now is if he would have demanded to be traded. Because why? He was going to lose his starting job. Notice something. In San Francisco, Trey Lance did not want to be no second or third stringer there in San Francisco. And he came out in the same draft as Zach Wilson. So what did he do? He privately went to the GM and the coach and demanded to be traded. That's what someone who sees themselves as a starter do. They're not going to now, excuse me, acquiesce to the bench. They're not going to be willing to just go sit on the bench. Because see, if you believe you're a starter in this league, you want to start. You don't really want to sit on the bench. You want to start. You want to play. When you got drafted in Green Bay, Brett Favre was there. It was 3 to 4 years that Brett Favre was playing that I might retire, I might not, game until the Packers eventually said, okay, we're going to move off of him and bring you in as the starter. Then just a couple of years ago, they drafted this guy by the name of Jordan Love in the first round. Excuse me. Excuse me. They drafted this gentleman by the name of Jordan Love in the first round. You was not happy about it, and you let the organization know it. Now, what happened to that keeping a positive attitude that you're telling the Jets fans and the Jets and former legends of the Jets to do? To not be so negative. Yeah, you was negative when they drafted Jordan Love. You didn't take too kindly to that. And you let the organization and you let the world know it. Now, from my understanding, you didn't mistreat Jordan Love. You treated him well, which, and if that's the case, I'm appreciative of it. But I understood because you as a competitor, you don't want somebody drafting your replacement. You wanted to leave on your terms. But they was kind of like doing to you what they did to Brett Favre, slowly ushering you out the door. And that's what these organizations do. The longer you hang around, eventually that's what's going to happen. So when you was in California deciding whether to continue playing or retire, the Jets sent their entire contingency, the owner, The coach, the GM, hell, they even sent the janitor out there. Now, they really didn't send the janitor, but I'm being facetious, but you get the point. They sent their entire contingency out there to woo you to come to New York. Now, Zach Wilson should have took that as an affront, an offense, that, wait a minute, you just drafted me. Yes, I struggled and I've gone through a lot, but you're going to just give up on me and you're going to go and get somebody to replace me? Well, then I want out. He did not do that. He willingly accepted the backup role. And my dad has a theory, and I can't say he's wrong. If you accept the backup role, that's what you are, a backup. And he also has another theory is if you're not requested to start after 3 years of sitting on the bench, so let's say you get drafted. If you're not requesting to start 3 years late, within 3 years, you're a backup. So my dad has these theories, and I got to admit, he's right on them. He's right on them. And so anyway, when Zach Wilson accepted the backup role, that told you everything you needed. And after the debacle that took place last year, the Jets organization did not do Zach Wilson any favors. They should have ushered him out of the building. He should have never been in a position where if something happened to you, we have to rely on him. That should have never happened. They should have removed him. So now, unfortunately, because you blew out your Achilles or your calf or your Achilles or whatever it was, 4 snaps into the first game, now we're looking at an entire season where, oh my God, we had playoff aspirations. And some people was even, God forbid, mentioning Super Bowl. But at the very least, playoff aspirations. And that's now being threatened because why? We have to go back to a quarterback who not only couldn't cut the mustard last year, but refused to accept accountability. So he lost the locker room. And now I'm supposed to now believe that after a few months, he regained it. After a year, he regained it. No, that doesn't work that way. In the NFL, it just doesn't. Or in sports, when you lose the locker room as a player, a coach, or whatever, you don't regain it. It doesn't work that way. So you were supposed to remove him. So really, the Jets fans is lashing out at Zach Wilson because we can't lash out at the Jets management and organization for screwing this up. And at the end of the day, that's what they did. They screwed this up. Mike White, they let go, who was a competent backup, for him to go and sign in Miami for 2 years for $8 million, or somewhere around that, which roughly comes out to a little bit more than $4 million a year. Don't tell me you could not have kept Mike White in that building. Yes, you could have, and still got Aaron Rodgers. Now, at least if something happens to Aaron Rodgers, we at least got Mike White. We at least got a shot. Teddy Bridgewater was out there. Okay? He didn't sign for big money. He signed with Detroit. He didn't sign for big money. These are competent backups. You got to have a competent backup in this league in the event, because you're always one play away from that guy playing. The sport that you play doesn't allow for longevity. And see, the main reason why I didn't want the Jets to go and get you is mainly because of your age. So then now you're going to go and criticize Joe Willie Namath, because Joe Namath said he doesn't want to see Zach anymore? You are, oh, you're not helping matters. Who the hell are you? You just got here. You just had a cup of coffee, dog. And matter of fact, you didn't even play. So we don't owe no loyalty to you. Joe Namath is a legend here. That's the sad part, but it's the reality. And I'm not saying it's the sad part because Joe Namath shouldn't be a legend. Joe Namath should be a legend. But the problem is he's the last person to have guaranteed a Super Bowl, a championship win, and delivered. And you got to know something about New York, Rodgers. When you guarantee in this city and then you deliver, you get legendary status. That's why Mark Messier is a legend. He's more known for what he did here in New York than he did when he was in Edmonton. And he won more cups in Edmonton. But everybody remembers his time in New York for a reason. When you win in New York is bigger than winning anywhere else. I don't care the sport. That's the reality. This is New York City. This is not Green Bay, Wisconsin. And many times in big pressure moments, you folded. That would not have worked here in New York. You would not be looked at the same way here in New York had you did that here in New York. But that man made a promise and he delivered. So we don't care about his stats or anything else for that matter. He's a legend here. And until you make a guarantee and deliver, you're not a legend here. You're just a passer through. Now, if you want to become legendary, guarantee and then deliver. Or even if you don't guarantee, damn it, at least come here and deliver us a championship. Then you will now become a New York legend. But until then, you're just passing through. And you're going to criticize a legend. And see, obviously, the Jets listened because before Joe Willie Namath made those comments, the Jets did not make a move. Notice the organization did not make a move to bring in a backup quarterback or a quarterback who can threaten Zach Wilson. Notice that. Only when Joe Namath spoke, now the Jets conveniently got off their rear and brought in a quarterback. Now, Trevor Siemian is not the quarterback I would have brought in. So we're now forced to live with him. I would have brought in Carson Wentz instead, but they chose Trevor Siemian. Fine. But at least they brought somebody in. At least they brought somebody in, which now brings me to Mike Florio and Chris Sims. Now, Chris, I know that you was a big Zach Wilson supporter. Matter of fact, you even had him, and it's the number one pick in that draft, saying he would be better than Trevor Lawrence. And I get it. You know, we all have those crazy picks or the crazy takes. And yeah, and you had a crazy take. Let's just call it what it is. But I heard Mike Florio say, oh, this was before the Jets signed Trevor Siemian. Well, what is the Jets supposed to do, Jet fans? What's the Jets supposed to do? Okay? Your season was over the minute Aaron Rodgers blew out his Achilles. So why are you banging on Zach Wilson? Not to me, it's like Mike. And then he mocked us talking about Carson Wentz. Well, you're not getting 2017 Carson Wentz. Every team wants that 2017 Carson Wentz. Here's my message to Mike Florio. Mike. And I like you, Mike. I generally do. Even though I do have some issues with you, but generally I like you. You can't be that idiotic. Think of it this way. I hope you're never on a plane, an airplane, where the pilot and the co-pilot has the attitude you have. Because if you're on a plane where the pilot and the co-pilot has the attitude you have, and something happens to that plane while you're in the air, you're in some trouble. Because what you just basically said was give up and do nothing. Oh, well, there's a problem. Well, what am I supposed to do? No, you're supposed to do what any trained pilot and co-pilot worthy of their salt would do. Fight for their life to get that plane on the ground as safely as possible, sparing as many lives as possible. Knowing that it's not going to be now a smooth landing. And we might not even get to the destination that we was anticipating. That's what a good trained pilot does. Now, why am I bringing that up? Because a good trained organization never leaves anything to chance. They're not going to sit up there and say, 4 weeks into the season, when you got 17 more weeks to go, I mean, not 17, 14 more weeks to go. I'm sorry. 3 weeks into the season with 14 more weeks to go, they're not going to say, well, you know what? I know we had playoff hopes, potentially Super Bowl hopes, but let's ride the rest of the season, even though nobody in the city or in that locker room wants that man to play. Let's just ride with him. And we're supposed to be okay with that. No, you bring in somebody in hopes that they're at least functional and can keep the team afloat. That's what you got to do. You got to at least try. Your attitude is we should just give up. No, you don't give up. You try. You try. Because the way that young man is playing, he's ultimately going to get hurt. Because what happens is guys start getting frustrated. And when guys get, and you can see it on the sidelines, and we're only 3 weeks into the season. When guys are arguing on the sideline and fighting with the coaching staff on the sideline and fighting with Zach Wilson on the sideline, eventually now a guy conveniently misses a block. Or does, in other words, it's not going to make Zach Wilson look good, and he put his physical health in danger. Is this what you want? No, get that young man off the stage. He should have never been there to begin with. A good organization always has not only a plan A, which the Jets had was a plan A, which was bringing in Aaron Rodgers, but a good organization has what they call a plan B, a contingency plan in case plan A doesn't work. The Jets had a plan A, they just didn't have a plan B, which means what? The Jets is not a good organization. They're not a good organization. And the Jets need to get this figured out because you're going to lose a good team if you didn't bring somebody in. And it took Joe Namath to say he's fed up with what he's seen. Because now, guess what he said? Both the coach and the GM should go. Now, all of a sudden, they got off their rear ends and brought in a quarterback. How convenient. It took a legend to say this for you to now move when you should have moved. Really, you should have moved the minute Aaron Rodgers went down. Really, you should have. But you sat there a couple of more weeks later. You can't worry about this young man's feelings at this point. You can't. Now, I would be hypocritical for me to say not give Zach Wilson a chance. Well, he's the backup. Once Aaron Rodgers went down, well, let's see what he can do. There was talk of, go give Tom Brady a call, and I was against that for a number of reasons. Number one, if you couldn't protect Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers is at least mobile, something Tom Brady never was, how are you going to protect Tom Brady? Oh, and Brady's older than Aaron Rodgers. So that's your first problem. Here's your second problem. Brady had already entered into retirement. And you don't want to bring a guy who just entered into retirement off the retire. You don't want to do that because that means his heart isn't there. Third reason is he played for the enemy up north there, the New England Patriots. And it would have gotten back that you called him up. It would have been a disaster. Now you can definitely lose the young man, and he's the only quarterback you got on the roster. Would not have been good. Because it would have gotten back that you called him Tom Brady. It would have gotten back. We would have been, because it would have been disastrous. Now this brings me to Rex Ryan. Sexy Rexy, as he is called. I'm not calling him Sexy Rexy, but that's a phrase that he was used on him when he was coaching here in New York. I like you, buddy, but there's a reason why you're sitting in the studios and you're not coaching on a football field. You're not a dumb guy. You should still be coaching. But you know why you're no longer coaching? Because you never adapted to the times. What do I mean? You made a statement on First Take, whether it was today or yesterday, doesn't really matter, but you made this statement that, if I was the head coach, I would say to the team, particularly talking to my defense. Look, it's on you. You have to go out and win the games. You can't give up points. We got to win the game in spite of this guy. Now, first of all, if you said that to the team, do you not understand what you're really saying? Because that's what we did when I was with the Ravens back in 2000 and yada 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 yada. First of all, Rex, this is not 2000. The rules have changed. It's almost impossible for a team not to give up points today. You're going to give up some points today because the rules are set up to give up points. The rules are set up because they've weakened the defenses. It's now an offensive league, in case you haven't recognized that, Rex. That's why you're seeing these quarterbacks throw for all these numbers. Because the defenses are not, the rules is not set up for the defenses today. They're set up for the offense. It's offense friendly. You can't get near the quarterback today without risking penalties, flags, and ultimately a fine. You can't get near them. The rules are set up today differently than it was back in 2000. You can't play that way into today like you did in 2000. And you haven't caught up to that yet. You can't just say to the quarterback, turn around, hand the ball off, don't throw it, hand the ball off, and we're going to win with defense in the run game. That does not work today. A team is going to quickly any team worth their salt is going to quickly pick up on that and force the young man to throw the football. That's the way it works today. That ground and pound might get you through one season, but you can't consistently play. Why do you think the Tennessee Titans keep underachieving? They play ground and pound, but at least Tannehill can somewhat throw the football, but he's not good enough to run the football to get them anywhere. But imagine if that was Zach Wilson playing for Tennessee. They definitely going to be in the bottom. Because why? You got to have a quarterback who can at least throw the football and make completions. He has to see what he's reading. You can't have receivers running wide open and he can't see it. That's not going to work. That's not going to work. You got to have somebody who's at least competent. This Trevor Siemian, he's at least competent. I'm not saying he's good, but he's at least competent. And that's all you need at the quarterback position with the New York Jets, given that you got a defense. But if you don't have somebody who's competent, you're basically wasting away. And eventually the defense is going to give up on you. That happens because why? Tony Dungy could have had a championship in Tampa Bay. That defense was stellar under Tony Dungy. But what did they get? The defense got tired of doing. Feeling like they had to be the only one. Because why? They couldn't get scores from the offensive side of the ball because they were very conservative. So he ended up losing the defense, which means he ultimately ended up what? Losing his job. Keyshawn told it. Keyshawn's on the offensive side of the ball, but when he got to Tampa, after a while, he saw that Sapp was quitting on Tony Dungy. Sapp was one of the leaders of that defense. Because why? They wanted somebody who can at least give them some offense. Enter John Gruden, who made some changes, not big changes, but some slight changes. Got somebody who at least knew how to make a play call, and now all of a sudden they go and win the Super Bowl the year you left. Now you ultimately got one in Indianapolis, and I'm happy you got that one. But what did they told you? Don't touch the offense. Come in here, fix that defense. And that's ultimately what you did. You never got it to Tampa Bay level, but you still got it pretty good. But the point being, you can't just win with defense in the running game, especially in today's game. That, excuse me, might have worked in the late 90s, early 2000s. It doesn't work today. And this is where Rex is failing to understand. And I like Rex Ryan, but you fail to understand that's not going to work today. Now I want to talk about the play around the league. The offense, see, this is the problem now that you're facing in today's game. A lot of these teams are not playing their players in preseason. So you so what it is they're waiting until the regular season to play them. And I understand why, because you're trying to avoid wear and tear and injuries. So I get it. But the problem is the first month of the season is now the extended preseason. And Belichick pretty much said as much because he told his team some years ago that the first 4 games almost doesn't count. That the time to get serious is really in October. Because why? Because teams don't play their guys in the preseason for the most part. These guys are coming in, and offenses is always last to catch up because the defense always have an advantage in the first month of the season because offenses is just finding themselves. So you got a lot of bad quarterback play and a lot of bad offensive play for at least the first so far this season, and it's almost like on par. So I expect the quarterback play to get better as the season continues to go. But but that just seems to be a trend now of late. Um, I feel see the only and getting back to the Jets real quick, the only thing that's keeping Joe Douglas safe is the fact that Justin Fields have regressed badly in Chicago. Because everybody knows I'm a big Justin. Anybody who knows, they know I'm a big Justin Fields fan. I think he's better than what he looks, especially this year. But the Bears have totally screwed him up and totally screwed that team up. That's a really bad team. They're them. They're right now a dumpster fire. There's some teams that are close, but right now I can make an argument that the Bears are the worst team in the league. They got a coach who doesn't know what he's doing. He's over his head, and it's showing. The quarterback is frustrated. He looks lost. He's definitely not reading the field. He's missing open receivers, and I don't mean overthrowing them or misthrowing on them, but he's not throwing the ball to them. He's taking unnecessary sacks, and now he's banged up. So if he was playing well, and I'm talking about Justin Fields, the Joe Douglas, you would be in some trouble. The fans would be calling for your firing because you missed on that so badly. Zach Wilson should have never been drafted by us. And that's another thing. We need to improve our draft analysis of quarterbacks because no matter the administration, we seem to stink at that. And that's just unacceptable. um, right now, San Francisco, Miami, right now they look like the 2 best teams in the league in either conference from both conferences. I mean, followed by Philadelphia, to a lesser degree Dallas. I think the loss of Trayvon Diggs, I think that's his name, is a big loss for them. But Philly, you could throw Philly in there, even though, excuse me, offensively they have been struggling off with the passing game. Their passing game is not nearly as crisp as it was last year. I think the loss of Shane Steichen is taking them a while now to get adjusted to this new coordinator. I think eventually they'll figure it out, but they're too good of a team, and Jalen Hurts is too good of a player not to. So I expect them to get that straightened out. Um, Justin Herbert, he's put up another stellar season, but it's getting overshadowed because his coach don't know what the hell he's doing. I think that coach is going to be gone. He did something that was boneheaded, and luckily for him, Kirk Cousins in Minnesota bailed him out because you don't go for it at your own 24, 25-yard line, folks, when you're up. You don't do that. You don't go for it on no fourth down. You just don't do that. You punt the ball when you're that deep in your zone, when you're up. If you're down, that's one thing. But when you're up, punt the football. And you got to rely on your D. That was that's bad coaching. He just got bailed out. Um, right now, CJ Stroud looks like if the season was to end today, he would be the offensive rookie of the year. He's been good as advertised on the offensive end. He looks like right now the best quarterback out of that draft, but it's still early. I think it's too early to make any judgments on Bryce Young at this time or any of these quarterbacks. But right now, he looks like the best quarterback out of that draft. But again, it's only three weeks in, so you got to wait. To me, it's hard to make a judgment after only a couple of weeks. You got to wait at least a couple of years to see before you could properly assess who was the best coming out of that draft. You got teams that were supposed to be tanking for Caleb Williams, who's the quarterback of USC, but things haven't exactly gone as planned. See, management may want a team to tank, but the players and coaches, that is it's hard to get them to do that because why? They're tied to wins. And this is too rough of a game to look at trying to lose. Okay? Because first of all, players don't have the career span that most other athletes do in other sports. And on top of that, their money isn't fully guaranteed like it is in other sports. So they don't have the luxury of tanking seasons. And so, like a team like, say, Arizona, which was expected to be the worst team in the league, well, they're far from the worst team in the league. I mean, they're not the best team in the league. They're far from that, but they're definitely not the worst team in the league, and they're far from it. Right now, Chicago's taking that billing as the worst team in the league. Um, there was other teams like Tampa that was supposed to be tanking, and some others, but they're playing hard, and that's good to see. That the players is not going for that tanking stuff, because you don't want to see that because bad football is bad football. Nobody wants to see bad football. It's just the reality. Um, it's good right now. I like what is happening in Cleveland. Their defense is legit. I like Jim Schwartz. The first three, he has totally revamped that defense. More or less all the pretty much the same guys, but now they seem to be playing with a purpose. Where like last year they just wasn't very good. This year they seem like they're playing with a purpose. And again, it's still early, but I like where they're going. And Deshaun Watson, whom I'm a big fan of, and I don't care who doesn't like it. Whether they like it or not, it does, as The Rock would say, it doesn't matter whether you like it or not. I'm a fan of Deshaun Watson. Um, he finally got on track this past week against Tennessee, but we're going to need to see more and more. We're going to need to see that consistency. Now, I've been following his career when he was in Houston, but I didn't realize it was just brought to my attention recently that historically speaking, he gets off the slow starts. Now, what it is after a few games, he heats up. But he brought it to the memory of the media here, and not here, but the media in Cleveland, that he gets off the slow starts for whatever reason. He starts slow, but then he tends to heat up. So he's almost like a microwave in a sense. A microwave starts cold and then it heats up and boom, you're good to go. Or like an oven. An oven is cold in the beginning. When you first turn it on, it takes a while to heat up. And once it heats up, boom, it's good to go. So he's like a microwave or an oven or however you want to put it. He's a slow starter, but he tends to ratchet it up as the season goes along. And if that happens in Cleveland, the Cleveland is going to be a tough out. They're going to be tough to beat. It's just the reality. Baltimore, they're almost like a Jekyll and Hyde trying to figure them out. Um, one week they don't look so great. Next week they look much better. Next week not so hot. So it's like they got to figure out what they are doing offensively because they're consistently inconsistent, and that's not good, especially in the passing game. Um, Lamar didn't have his better passing performance. He was off target this past Sunday because, quite frankly, you should have beaten Indianapolis. But congratulations to Indianapolis. They're 2-1, surprisingly 2-1. Um, but you want to be doing this with your rookie quarterback, but unfortunately he's out. He's in the concussion pro. He's out due to the concussion protocol. He's gonna have to protect himself, or else he won't last long in this league. It's just the reality. Guys are pretty fast in this league, and they get paid. So that's the reality. Let me see. What else do I want to talk about? I like what I'm seeing also from well, Kansas City they got off to a slow start. They haven't been clicking on all cylinders, particularly on the offensive end. But I expect them to pick that up as the season moves on. But I'm gonna tell you the team that has been very surprising. The Houston Texans. They have actually been very competitive. Could have won a couple of more games, but they definitely got a win yesterday. I mean on Sunday, which was good. Um, and I'm a fan of C.J. Stroud. He's the quarterback there in Houston. And so right now he looks like the best quarterback coming out of Ohio State since God knows when, probably ever. Um, so I like what I'm seeing in Houston, and it goes to show you don't need an offensive-minded head coach for a young quarterback to do well. If a quarterback knows what he's doing, you don't need an offensive. You need now good coaching. Don't get me wrong, but you don't need no offensive-minded head coach because D'Amico Ryans, who's the head coach of the Houston Texans, is on the defensive side of the ball, and C.J. Stroud right now is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The first 3 weeks in, he's looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Matter of fact, he's putting up Justin Herbert type numbers that Justin had in his rookie season. So that tells me that you don't need an offensive minded guy, because see that narrative that a lot of people in the media, particularly Colin Cowherd, is espousing that, oh, you need to have these young guys need to have an offensive minded guy. Now it helps, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't help. But they don't need to have that, but you need to have good coaching. And that was what brings me now back to the Bears. The Bears had a chance to hire a quarterback guru in Jim Caldwell. Now, Jim Caldwell has been successful with every quarterback, and I'm certain I've mentioned this in other previous podcasts, but I'm going to mention this again, or previous shows, but I'm going to mention this again. Jim Caldwell has had success with every quarterback he's dealt with, that he had his hands on. He wanted that Chicago job a year ago. He wanted that job. He says, I can get Justin Fields, because that's what he wanted. And Ryan Poles decided to go and hire. So not only did you not hire him, you didn't even interview Eric Bieniemy, who was doing well there as an offensive coordinator in Kansas City. And Ryan Poles, you came from the Kansas City organization. So instead of you hiring Eric Bieniemy, or who my preference would have been, Jim Caldwell, you went and hired this Matt Eberflus guy, and it looks like he's lost the team a year and a half, not even a year and a half in, a year and 3 games. He looks clueless. And his side of the ball, he's supposed to be a defensive guy, and his side of the ball is one of the worst, if not the worst, in the league. I think right now they compete with Denver as to who's the worst defense in the league. That's not that means he's not doing his job. Then what good are you? If your side of the ball, you're the head coach, and your side of the ball is not good, because every head coach comes from one side of the ball or the other. So they either going to come from the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball, or the special teams. So they're going to come. That's going to be their specialty, is one of those sides of the ball. And if that side of the ball is not good, then that means you're not good. You're not good. You're in over your head. And now what's going to happen is the people in Chicago is calling for a total blow up, which means everybody goes. Justin Fields, Matt Eberflus, Ryan Poles, you all got to go. And it's sad because there could have been something had you hired the right head coach. See, that's why hiring the right head coach is very, very important. It's very, very important. You got see what it is. A lot of these guys try to force guys to into a certain system instead of getting guys to play. I mean, instead of adapting the system around that player. And this is where they make their mistake. And it's like you're not learning. Stop doing that. Don't force guys to be something they're not, especially if you don't have the personnel to execute it. You make adjustments until you get the personnel to execute what it is you want to do. So that's just my take about the Jets and some notes around the league. I want to thank you for watching this show. Click on the thumbs up for the like sign to let me know if you like it. If you don't like it, you can put the thumbs down, but I prefer that you click the thumbs up. And if you can subscribe, that helps, So have a nice evening.